seriously really try to, it's almost like trying on a shirt to try a new way to experience the class. Because almost every class you've taken, you're required to like see what the PowerPoint slides are, learn all the names and all the things that you have to learn, and then tell them on the test. And you're not doing that here. So don't feel frustrated if you're like, well, but what is it that Hobbes said? And, you know, you're not going to be tested on that, you know. And the stuff that you're going to be tested on, I'm going to do a really good job of giving that information. For instance, the part of the lecture today that helps you prepare for exam 1, I wrote up extensive lecture notes, and they're in the course outline. You can download a Word document and just get, you know, and you have those with you on the exam. So that's kind of fun too. All right, so we're going to practice categorizing the claims. We're going to talk a little bit about the reading, the history of causality, and the mistakes that people have made. In particular, we're going to be talking about the mistake of overconfidence, believing something that's an inference is actually a fact when it's not a fact, which caused a bunch of people to die of COVID unnecessarily, unfortunately. And then there's the underconfidence of, well, you haven't proven it, and that also causes problems in the world. And so we're going to talk about some examples of that. Okay, yeah, don't try to memorize facts. There's a fancy word of epistemology, which is the study in philosophy of how we know what we know. You do not need to know that word, but that's kind of where we are. We're learning different kinds of epistemologies of knowing things, okay? All right, during the last lecture, I kind of told you a story that a lot of philosophers were really focused on virtue and thinking about what's good, what it means to be a good person, what it means for government to be good, kind of utopian thinking, you know? And in a sense, all humans' brains are constantly on, is this good? Is this bad? Is this good? Is this right? Like, you know, judging, you know, like we're constantly judging. Y'all are probably judging me. I know y'all. And, you know, I'm not a judger, so I'm like, but it's illogical. But, you know, so anyway. So we're constantly focused on what is good and what is true or false. And I'm trying to remove that cancer from your brain a little bit, you know, to try to disentangle and get you to be curious about the gray areas kind of thing. All right, so Hobbes changed that focus into prevent of human suffering and tells us basically to focus on preventing what's bad. And when you're trying to do general predictive causality, you're focused on preventing things in the future. We want to prevent people from dying of opiate deaths, right? You know, there's things that we want to prevent. All right, so let's list some attributes. This is class participation. You can list things that you think are good or that your weird neighbor thinks is good, but what are some things where we would say that defines a virtuous human? What might you say? Just call it out. You know, anything? Yes, please. Being a good neighbor. Okay, great, yes. Honesty is a great one. Honesty, Plato's Republic begins with honesty. It's kind of an interesting thought experiment there. Others? Charity, I like it. What's that? Loyalty, I love it. Loyalty, okay, good. Humble, great. All right, so let's do some things where we want a show of hands. How many people are certain honesty is always good? Okay, a few people. How many people think sharing with your neighbor is what's required to be a good person? We got a couple people. What about loyalty? Is loyalty always good? Oh, we got some hands up on loyalty. That's kind of funny. It's kind of like, though, you could be loyal to a friend, but would you actually help that friend bury a body? You know, it's like, you know, there's like these moral quandaries there. All right, so what about what it means to be a good government? Is everybody, I'd love a list of hands. Who thinks that everything about the way politics works in this country is awesome? What? No one? Right? What would be good? What would be just? Like name like an attribute of utopian society. Yes.
I would say be representative of the general public.
Okay, representative of general public. But what if the majority of the public wants to, steal the property from the other half? Right? Like it becomes kind of difficult. But I agree. Like, in a sense, we try to think about democracy as not promoting what's good, but just preventing the most worst kind of thing. All right. Yes? Okay, the interest of the people they're representing, the self-interest type thing, yes? Unbiased. So what does that mean? What's that? Unbiased in the justice system. What does that mean?
You don't take a side over somebody else.
Yeah, okay, so like impartiality. So here's a little fun fact, study that was done. People in trial courts that are like criminal trial courts get way worse sentences before lunch as compared to after lunch. So maybe being aware of something like that, right? And checking in that, hey, given that, I'd like my court date to be 1 p.m. instead of 11 a.m. It's that kind of like, there's a lot of weird stuff out there about the way justice works. Okay, so, but does everybody think impartiality? Okay, so in other words, here's some common responses I've gotten when I've asked that question. It is good to share with your neighbors. We got charity. Be a social justice activist. How many people think that's the definition of good? I won't even look. Okay, so, not, right? Okay. Be a good Jew, Hindu, Christian, like be a good, representative of your religion, follow the, rules and all that. Recycle, that's good. All right. Oh, take drugs and play video games all day. Does anybody have a hand for that? Y'all won't tell me. You don't know I won't judge you, but you still won't tell me. Okay. So here's some governments that have a very precise definition of the good. Anyone want to think of a government that has defined the good in a very precise way in order to build kind of a utopia? Anyone think of anything, please? The Second French Republic. Which one was that one? Was that Napoleon? Oh, okay. Was it good?
It was better. It was following the Reign of Terror, they realized there were a lot of basically things they needed to change. And then during that change, Napoleon took over. And it was only after Napoleon was exiled to St. Helena that they basically were able to put those into effect.
So were they trying to prevent what's bad, or were they trying to promote what's good?
They were trying to promote what's good and remove what was bad.
Yeah, okay. But what was their definition of what it means to be a virtuous human being? Did they define it narrowly?
They defined it in 3 terms: equality, liberty, and
fraternity. Yeah, okay, good. All right. Excellent. Does everybody else agree that equality is the best thing? It depends on what equality means, right? It's like, okay, I know what I'll do. I'm going to take points from the people who do really well on the exam and give them to the other students. Or, it becomes problematic. Please.
Oh, I just wanted to talk about, I'd say like the Finnish government, but they just kind of have a more homogenous society, so it's easier to cater to those interests.
Yeah, like a social democracy.
Yeah.
Kind of like we take care of people if they're unemployed or, nobody's on the streets. And we try to rehabilitate in prison instead of torture people. And, they've got, they in a sense, some people will say they've got a pretty good thing going, kind of thing. But they wouldn't be everybody's definition of what's good, right? Who wants a perfect social democracy like they have in Finland? A few people, right? Okay, so here's some other governments that have defined the good in a very narrow and specific way, okay? Communism. Nazi government defined the virtue in a very specific way, right? How many people think they had it right? Right? Okay, so here we've got theocracies. I'll give you some examples. Puritan New England was a theocracy. The Massachusetts Charter of Liberty said you could be put to death if they find out you don't actually believe in God. Is that somewhere you want to live? I mean, even if you believe in God, is that somewhere where you want to live? Where you're not, I'm not worried about that, right? We don't want to live there. There's some other ones. Personality. You know what's good? I am, right? The monarchies with the divine right, and North Korea is kind of in that boat, and cults are kind of have their own little government, and apparently Scientologists, they have jails for people who violate their rules, and so they're kind of like a government. We don't want to live in any of these places, right? And that is what Hobbes told us. We do not want to live in any of the places. I mean, where Plato's Republic gets to is bizarre, you know, and probably intentionally to say, oh, there's a problem here or something. You know, it's not clear, but if we try to list some things that are bad, list some things that are bad. Like, what are bad people and bad governments? Well, we just listed a bunch of bad governments in a sense, right? Yes. Great. Genocide, bad. Everyone agree? Genocide is bad. Okay, we all agree. All right, good. What else? Yeah. What's that? Prejudice and discrimination is bad. Okay, do we all agree? Like racists are a bunch of jerks? Yeah, okay, good, yes. Corruption is great, right? Corruption is bad, yes. Xenophobia, right? Like have a white supremacist or any kind of supremacist, like it's like yuck, yes? Arbitrary use of force. The Soviets were kind of good at that, where they were just like, you know what, let's just murder some people, you know? Pol Pot did that as well. I mean, there's a lot of things like that. It is bad to torture people to death. At least you don't want that done to you. Every human agrees with that, right? All right, to die of COVID unnecessarily, die of a drug overdose, take a bribe. Who said corruption? Corruption, take a bribe. Be disruptive in your university course. Y'all are like, some of you are like, sometimes I want to shake things up. I'm like, good, bring it on. Hobbes tells us exactly. We can agree on what's bad. So stop wasting your time on utopian thinking, which is actually the worst. And start just finding a problem and figuring out how to solve it. Now, I'm not telling you to think that. I'm just telling you to consider that it's possible, that it's a reasonable approach to what we do as scholars. All right. And then we have to figure out data and causality. All right, so here, constitutional democracies are also called liberal democracies, but liberal in this case doesn't mean liberal like you think of it. There's a very weird situation with liberal where sometimes it means the opposite of what it means the other times. And liberal in this case just means a democracy that protects rights and liberties. Because I'll tell you what, there are no liberties that the majority of virtually any population, there are no liberties that are supported by the majority. The most popular liberties in this country are guns and abortion, just to give you a sense. All right, so that's kind of funny. So who decides what's good in a constitutional democracy? You do. You can play sports, you can study hard, you can be any religion, you can protest, and you can learn statistics. All right, so, but you can't do drugs. Drugs are bad. Drugs are wrong. I just have that on there because it's a little preposterous. All right, so, but we've decided that as a society. Thou shalt have reality at all times. All right. So in a sense, the thing that depressed all the philosophers, where they're trying to get back a little bit of the good, for me, it's the sunshine. It's the sunrise. Because it's like, that's right. You find what's bad, you figure out how to prevent it, and then fewer people are dying unnecessarily, yada, yada, right? That is how social science and a lot of the sciences are focused on, solving human problems, making human life less bad. All right, so we kind of move from deductive. Let's think about what the truth is about good, and then deduce what we ought to do from there. And instead, inductive, find a problem and solve it. And notice that this is related to the extra credit policy brief. You with some friends or colleagues, peers, you're going to identify a problem and you're going to come up with a policy as a solution and advocate to a legislator that this is what you should do. One of my former students, she just graduated last May. And she's out in the world writing white papers and policy briefs for state legislatures across the country. That's pretty cool. She's 23. Like, that is around the corner for a lot of you. Even if you're freshmen, it's still like next week, at least from my perspective. All right, so we're going to take a break here, and we're going to watch a TED Talk that is about statistics, but yet has been viral. All right. Hopefully YouTube doesn't make me watch the...
Expected to know a little about the world. And
Whoop.
about 10 years ago, I took on the task to teach global development to Swedish undergraduate students. That was after having spent about 20 years together with African institutions studying hunger in Africa. So I was sort of expected to know a little about the world. And I started in our medical university, Karolinska Institute, an undergraduate course called Global Health. But when you get that opportunity, you get a little nervous. I thought these students coming to us actually have the highest grade you can get in Swedish college system. So I thought maybe they know everything I'm going to teach them about. So I did a pre-test when they came. And one of the questions from which I learned a lot was this one. Which country has the highest child mortality of these 5 pairs? And I put them together so that in each pair of country, one has twice the child mortality of the other. And this means that it's much bigger the difference than the uncertainty of the data. I won't put you at a test here, but it's Turkey, which is highest there, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa. And these were the results of the Swedish students. I did it, so I got a confidence interval, which was pretty narrow, and I got happy, of course. I had 1.8 right answer out of 5 possible. And that means that there was a place for a professor of international health and for my course. But one late night, when I was compiling the report, I really realized my discovery. I have shown that Swedish top students know statistically significantly less about the world than the chimpanzees. Because the chimpanzee would score half right. If I gave them 2 bananas with Sri Lanka and Turkey, they would be right half of the cases. But the students are not there. The problem for me was not ignorance, it was preconceived ideas. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there. So this is where I realized that there was really a need to communicate, because the data of what's happening in the world and the child health of every country is very well aware. So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country. This country over here is, this is China. And this is India. The size of the bubble is the population. And on this axis here, I put fertility rate. Because my students, what they said when they looked upon the world, and I asked them, what do you really think about the world? Huh? Well, I first discovered that the textbook was Tintin mainly. And they said the world is still we and them. And we is Western world, and them is third world. And what do you mean with Western world? I said, well, that's long life in small family, and third world is short life in large family. So this is what I could display here. I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1962, 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still 2 types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We stop the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They're moving against better health. They're improving there. All the green Latin American countries, they are moving towards smaller families. The yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but longer lives, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here. They still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there. But now Bangladesh, it's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world.
Is it more general questions, or is it actually questions related to questions? I saw that it was
It's general.
Okay, because I saw that it was
In fact,
created by another
technically,
university.